Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and open our study session for Tuesday, November 2nd, and our one and only presentation is the logo guidelines, and we were presented by Dawn. Hi, Dawn. That's not very formal, but it is study session, so.
Oh, you're good. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm here this evening to give you an update on the Logo Usage Guidelines Committee and let you know what the committee came up with. Okay. So this internal committee was requested by the council on June 15th to discuss usage of our new logo. The members of the committee included departments that use the logo quite a bit in their normal operations and also have an interest in where that logo is used. So the departments who were part of this process were police, fire, parks and rec, public works, the people team, digital gov, economic development, development services, and then we had two council members who were on this committee with us as well, Councilmember Tilke and Councilmember September. I just want to thank the team for their great work in helping to provide some clarity on this important topic. We had a lot of good conversations and are happy to bring this forward this evening. The discussion that we had 5 meetings to talk about the logo and its usage, and the discussions really focused on our current usage. We looked at nearby municipalities to see how they were using their logos. We had some discussion on what would be the best use of our logo, what would make sense for Gilbert, and came up with a natural sort of a natural structure division between, you know, different types of structures as where we would use our logo, and then also some possible exceptions to that, and then talked as well about where we would put that information on how the logo would be used. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening, our current usage, what some other municipalities that we looked at, how they're using the logo, the structure types that we came up with, and also an exception, and then where that information would go. So our current usage. As a team, we got together and everyone canvassed their areas to figure out where we're currently using the logo. And so this is the list that we came up with. So the logo is used in a lot of places around the town, including building signage and flags and billing statements and ID cards and promotional videos, manhole covers even. We found that the logo is being used in all of those places. So as we look to transition between the old green squirrel that we had and to our new logo, really the intent of this process that we discussed as well as a team was to use the logo only where the logo was already being utilized. As a part of the discussion, we did look at several municipalities surrounding us who either had recent logo processes or within the last couple years. And so the ones that we compared with and kind of looked at a little closer were Peoria, Glendale, and Chandler. And this slide really is just to show that the standards for the usage of their logos and brands were what we looked at to try and see where we could find some natural connections or where we could find a starting place. But this is really just to show that each city really determines what they want to put in their brand standards. And so, for example, Gilbert has chosen to use have photography as something that we define in ours, and Chandler as well. But Peoria and Glendale did not have that subject in there. So just various brand standards, just depending on the cities and what they chose was important. So just to give a little bit of background on the recent processes that these cities went through, Peoria actually had an update to their seal back in 2017, but also in 2018 created a new brand identity for their city. Glendale also unveiled a new logo and a brand in 2019, and Chandler as well, a new logo and tagline and brand statement as well in 2019. So here's some examples of how each one of these cities is using their logo, and examples that we looked at that are similar, I think, to how we currently use ours, that we could, draw some connections to. So in having the conversation, well, let me back up. In looking at the examples and the places where these cities were using their logos, one of the things we found is that there really was not a specific guideline on where the logo would be used. So while they had these pictures and these examples, there wasn't we're going to use the logo on this specific thing and not on this other thing. What we did find, though, is that they did have some standards for size or aspect or color that would be appropriate to use. So in looking at the specific list of places where we currently use our logo, we looked for a natural sort of division, a place where we could draw some correlation between some of the items and determine that we have two places, two structure types that we use our logo on, and that would be temporary structure or place types, and permanent structure or place types. And so a temporary structure or place type from our list would be things like digital communications or other communications, trade show items, advertisements, trash cans, vehicles, event podiums. These types of things are things that have a natural life to them. There's going to be a certain time frame that we're going to be utilizing those before we would change those out, or before there would be a natural place for us to put a new logo if there's a new logo. So we really determined that these things were not going to be expensive to change out, and they were not going to be things that we would really cause any imposition on the town when or if we had a new logo to change those out. So these types of temporary structures we saw as acceptable, and the team really felt strongly that these things they would be comfortable with moving forward. So in terms of permanent structures, we looked at permanent structures as structures that do not have a specific time frame that they would be utilized, or a time frame, a natural division of where we would change those out, and could naturally make those changes if there was a change in the logo. And so two of the items that we determined would be structures that we would not recommend moving forward with in terms of having the logo on them would be building exteriors, because those are obviously more difficult, more expensive to change out. And then also if there's any interior decor, such as flooring, where we would not recommend going forward that those areas have logos. So just to clarify, as we're looking at these, we are looking at this going forward. So any existing structures that do have these things, we know that there are several buildings that do have logos on them, as well as we do have a town building that does have a logo that is embedded in the floor. And so moving forward, we would look at those as a permanent structure, and not one that we would recommend would have the logo moving forward. But PSTF would be the only exception to that. And the team talked quite a bit about this. And really, in looking at the PSTF exception, because we looked at not only as an exception to the standards, but really we referred to the approved construction plans for the logo placement and for the fact that we would let this continue. So these are the approved plans for the public safety training, and in the image that's on the top, what that shows is the east side of the building, where it does show public safety training facility, lettering, as well as the police and fire logo, which we are still in support of going on the building in that area. And then it also on the east elevation does show that the town logo was scheduled to go on the side of the building. Now, I do want to note that where it is showing there is not necessarily where it ended up, but the approved plans do show the logo being on the side of the building. So in terms of looking at where these changes or where these updates would go, it was a natural fit that where we have all of our brand standards is where we would see the natural place for this to go. So what we did as a group is look at those brand standards and determine that we would put those under section 51, which is a section that's called Where Does the Logo Go? And under that section, we would have this page, which would talk about the logo going on temporary items. It defines here what a temporary item is, which is something with a definitive life cycle where there will be a need to be switched out after, a need to switch out after a period of time, and we would not recommend that on permanent items, which permanent items would be considered ones that do not have that specific life cycle that would have that natural place where you would change that out. And then questions about where these items may fall would be at the discretion of the department director or the town manager. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Dawn?
I'll just make a few comments. Oh, you want to ask questions?
Go ahead.
I have one question about, you mentioned one of the items was a manhole. Does that fall under temporary or permanent items?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Vice Mayor?
Does a manhole fall under temporary or permanent items?
So the manhole would fall under a temporary item because those are items that we change out. There's a long lead time there, but it is an item that we looked at, and we even discussed whether or not it was an appropriate place to put a logo or, some kind of a sign or something related to the town. There is a need to have those manholes actually say or have some kind of indication that they are from the town of Gilbert. Whether or not that's the logo, I think the team was thinking that that wasn't necessary, so it would probably say Gilbert but not have the logo on there.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, it's also a cost savings by not having the logo on the manholes, so that was another consideration. As Dawn mentioned, we wanted to make sure that the identification that needs to be on there for our public service workers was important, and so we decided not to put a logo on that. Thank you so much, Dawn, for that. Councilmember September and I spent quite a bit of time with the group on this, and I think what is really important to note is that we wanted to look at kind of the process we went through to get to the logo, and then there was some feelings that perhaps some people felt that there wasn't enough say. And so when we went back, we wanted to make sure we held extra meetings so that both, in this case, police and fire could go back to the people within their departments, get their buy-in, and come back. And so we did take a lot of extra time because one of the most important pieces of this as it relates to the public safety training facility is us honoring the service of our police and fire, and how we are going to do that while still connecting them to the whole community that is supporting them in not only this building, but in all of the other things that we do to support their training and the needs that they have. So I just wanted the council to know that we spent a lot of time on that, and we took it very seriously, and we came to this agreement. And so I'm proud of the work of the committee, and I'm looking forward to moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tilke, for agreeing to go down that road with all of us early on. And thank you, Dawn, for leading those meetings. I know it felt like you were herding cats sometimes, and I want to thank staff for all of the hard work that they put into this, all the research that they did. It was interesting to see how other jurisdictions use their logos, what kind of standards they apply, and I'm glad that we were able to go through that process to establish some guidelines for Gilbert for the future. Thank you.
I just have two questions, comments. One, I don't like the flag, the town flag will have the logo on it. I think that we need to come to a point of, as this town, to find something that represents Gilbert to be our flag, I would prefer. I don't think that a temporary logo is something that should be on our flag that represents us when we go places. That's a comment. And my question would be, what happens to this building when this logo goes away? Will this logo be changed out?
So, Mayor, I think the logo could be changed out if the logo were to change. We, as a committee, opted to not move any of either the green swirls that we had or the current logo off of any of the buildings, but that certainly could be an option in the future.
I just think this one's rather large, and if you want to, if the point, what you said was to connect public safety to the community in this building, and if that logo changes, that's an awfully large symbol out there that doesn't really connect to anybody any longer. I mean, I know that there are swirls in many places. Santan treatment plant has them in a roof so that they have a shadow down onto the ground. I know that those are in existence, but we don't have a building with this large of a logo anyplace in Gilbert. And so it concerns me that it's this large and what will happen in the future when that changes out, because logos are temporary. And that's what bothers me, I think, the most about the flag is logos are temporary. And I think that Gilbert's at the point in its lifespan and history that we should have a flag that identifies our community. And maybe that's a whole nother subcommittee and a discussion with somebody else, unless nobody agrees.
Mayor, I think that one of the considerations of keeping the logo here on this building is, one, the cost to remove it after we've already paid for it. So I would think in 20 years, when we look at the logo, I think that council will make that decision whether it's, they will spend the money to take that logo off and replace it or just take it off. So I feel comfortable at this point that decision can be made in the future. In regards to a flag, if I would see that as a separate discussion, if the council wants to have that, I'm happy to have that discussion separate and just kind of clearing that up. But I'm comfortable with the recommendations.
I noticed for the other cities that a flag is not something that they do. The three cities that you used as examples, Glendale, Peoria, and Chandler, their flag is not something that they use the logo on. And I happened to notice that, and it's one of the things that kind of sits with me is the flag.
Yeah, Mayor, I mean, that I like how you're looking into the future of what happens when the logo changes. Do we, is the public safety training facility the one building where the town is going to continue to put gigantic logos on the side of it, or would that open up an opportunity for something different? And I know that the relationship between our police and fire departments is very unique. I spent time talking to other council members from other cities, and they were surprised at how close our police and fire work together. So perhaps in the future, when there is a new logo and the opportunity for that logo to come down makes financial sense, then maybe that's the opportunity for fire and police to come up with a joint logo for this joint use facility. And who knows what that could be. I think there's some ideas. There's a challenge coin that was presented and some other things. But I'd be open to some additional dialogue. And as far as the flag, I like the idea of maybe a seal to be used on something like a flag, where a seal, it conveys something about Gilbert's founding values that is a little more permanent and talks about our authenticity as a community that would not be temporary but more permanent. But I'm open to that dialogue. I don't know how anxious I am to get on another committee right away, but I'll do what I'm asked.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, then I guess we will adjourn the study session. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody that participated in the committee.